The explosion was like a new star being born. Jake Morrison felt the shock wave hit the Defiant like a giant fist, throwing him against his chair so hard that his teeth rattled. The lights went out for a moment, and the ship spun through space. Like a toy, emergency power kicked in, bathing the bridge in red light. "Hull breach on deck 3! Ben Carter's voice crackled over the communication system. "Emergency teams to damage control!" Amy Collins fought with the flight controls, trying to stop the ship from spinning. Her hands moved quickly over the manual stabilizers, slowly bringing the Defiant under control. Through the window, Jake could see pieces of debris floating past. Some of them glowing with heat. "Amy, report," Jake called out, pulling himself back into his captain's chair. "We are alive, sir," Amy replied, sweat running down her face. "Engines are working. Life support is stable. We have some hull damage, but nothing that will kill us." Jake looked at the main screen. Where the creature had been, there was now nothing but empty space and floating chunks of biomechanical debris. The massive beast that had destroyed half. The convoy was completely gone, vaporized by the explosion of their makeshift bomb. "Dan, any sign of the creature?" Jake asked. Dan Cooper checked his instruments carefully. "Negative, sir. I am not detecting any large life signs. Whatever is left of that thing is smaller than a dinner plate." Lisa Parks stood up from where she had been thrown to the floor. She had a small cut on her forehead, but she was smiling. "We did it. We actually killed that monster." Rick Hayes was working frantically at his communication station. "Captain, I am getting messages from all the surviving ships. They want to know if we are okay." "Tell them we are damaged but alive," Jake said, "and ask for a count of survivors." As Rick sent out the messages, Jake looked around his bridge. His crew had done the impossible. With old technology and simple weapons, they had destroyed a creature that the most advanced ships in the galaxy could not even hurt. But the victory had come at a cost. The Defiant was badly damaged, and Jake did not yet know how many ships they had lost. "Sir," Rick said, "I am getting responses from the surviving vessels. The Zephyrian flagship is intact along with 2 escort ships. The Altarian heavy cruiser survived, but they lost 3 destroyers. In total, we lost 8 ships and over 400 crew members." Jake felt the weight of those losses. 400 people who would never go home to their families. But without the Defiant's intervention, everyone in the convoy would have died. Sometimes making the hard choice meant accepting terrible losses to prevent even worse ones. Ben Carter came onto the bridge, his uniform torn and covered in soot. "Captain, damage report. We have hull breaches on 3 decks, but my teams have them sealed. The engines took some damage from the shockwave, but they are still working. We can make it home, but it will be a slow trip." "Any casualties?" Jake asked. 5 crew members with broken bones, a dozen with cuts and bruises. But everyone is alive. Jake felt relief wash over him. His crew had survived. The ship was damaged but not destroyed. They had faced the impossible and lived to tell about it. "Captain," Rick called out, "the Zephyrian flagship is requesting permission to come alongside. Captain Veltar wants to speak with you personally." Jake was surprised. During the entire mission, the alien captains had treated him like he was not worth their time. Now one of them wanted to talk. "Tell him he is welcome aboard." 20 minutes. Later, Captain Veltar stood on the bridge of the Defiant. He was tall and thin, with blue skin and large eyes that seemed to take in every detail. Jake had expected him to look around with disgust at the simple human technology, but instead, the alien captain seemed impressed. "Captain Morrison," Veltar said in his strange accent, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong about your ship and your crew. You saved all of our lives today." "We did what needed to be done," Jake replied simply. "Yes, but you did it with weapons and technology that we dismissed as primitive. Our advanced systems were useless against that creature, but your simple explosives destroyed it completely." Lisa stepped forward. "Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways." Veltar nodded slowly. "We have much to learn from humans. Your species thinks differently than we do. When we saw a problem, we tried to solve it with more power, more advanced technology. But you found a simple solution that worked." The communication system crackled to life. "This is Captain Zorn of the Altarian ship Heavy Strike. Captain Morrison, my people would like to study your ship's weapon systems. We are very interested in learning about human military technology." Jake almost laughed. An hour ago, these aliens had called human weapons primitive and useless. Now they wanted to learn how to build them. "You are welcome to send your engineers over, Captain Zorn." Over the next few hours, teams of alien engineers and scientists came aboard the Defiant. They studied everything from the mining charges to the simple guidance systems. They were amazed by how the humans had solved complex problems with basics technology. Rick handed Jake a message tablet. "Sir, this just came in from Earth. Fleet Command is promoting you to Commodore and giving the entire crew medals for heroism." "What about the ship?" Jake asked. Rick smiled. "The Defiant is being transferred to the Frontier Exploration Fleet. We are getting orders to explore dangerous areas of space that other ships cannot handle." Jake felt proud. His ship was no longer being treated as outdated junk. The galaxy had learned that sometimes old technology was exactly what you needed when everything else failed. Amy looked up from her navigation station. "Captain, I am getting course requests from dozens of ships. Everyone wants the Defiant to escort them through dangerous areas. It seems we are popular now," Lisa said with a grin. Ben Carter came onto the bridge carrying a bottle of real whiskey that he kept hidden in the engine room for special occasions. "I think this calls for a celebration." Jake looked around at his crew. They were tired, dirty, and bruised, but they were alive and proud of what they had accomplished. The Defiant might look old and simple compared to the sleek alien ships, but it had proven that human determination and ingenuity could overcome any challenge. "Set course for home, Amy," Jake ordered. "But take the long way. I have a feeling we are going to be getting a lot more missions like this one." As the damaged but victorious Defiant began its journey home, Jake thought about the lessons they had all learned. Advanced technology was impressive, but it was not always the answer. Sometimes you needed people who could think with their hands, who could solve problems with simple tools and old-fashioned courage. The ship they had called outdated had saved the day, and now the entire galaxy knew that humans were not to be underestimated. The explosions lit up the inside of the creature like fireworks. Jake Morrison watched on the main screen as bright flashes appeared throughout the beast's body. Each mining charge went off exactly as planned, sending chunks of biomechanical flesh flying in all directions. The creature let out a sound that made the hull of the Defiant shake. "Direct hits!" Dan Cooper shouted from his tactical station. "All 20 charges detonated inside the target." For the first time since the attack began, the creature seemed hurt. Its tentacles thrashed wildly through space, and the lights on its body flickered like broken electrical wires. Parts of its surface were torn open, leaking some kind of glowing fluid into the nebula. "It is working," Lisa Park said with excitement. "The creature is actually damaged." But Jake could see that it was not enough. The beast was hurt, but not dead. Already the wounds on its surface were starting to close. The creature was healing itself using the energy it had absorbed from the alien ships. Worse, it was now very angry and looking directly at the Defiant. "Captain," Amy Collins called out from her navigation station. "The creature is turning toward us. I think it knows we heard it." Jake watched as the massive beast began moving in their direction. Its tentacles reached out like angry fingers, trying to grab the small human ship. The creature was much faster now, driven by rage and the need for revenge. "Amy, evasive maneuvers. Use manual piloting only," Jake ordered. Amy's hands moved over the old-fashioned flight controls. The Defiant did not have the advanced computer systems that the alien ships used. Everything was controlled by human hands and human reflexes. Amy had to calculate every turn and adjustment in her head, but she was good at her job. The ship rolled to the left just as a massive tentacle swept through the space where they had been. Jake could see the creature's surface up close now. It was covered in scars from the explosions, but new tissue was already growing to replace what had been destroyed. "Ben, how long until the creature heals completely?" Jake asked over the ship's communication system. Ben Carter's voice came back from the engine room. "Hard to say, Captain. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe less, but I have an idea. Tell me." "We still have our heavy mining charges, the ones we use for breaking up big asteroids. I could wire them all together into one massive bomb." Jake felt his stomach drop. The heavy mining charges were the most powerful explosives on the ship. They were meant to crack asteroids that were miles across. If Ben wired them all together, the explosion would be enormous. "How big would the explosion be?" Jake asked. "Big enough to vaporize this entire section of the nebula," Ben replied. "But we would have to get very close to make sure the creature does not escape." Lisa looked worried. "How close?" "Close enough that we might not survive the blast," Ben admitted. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him, waiting for orders. They all knew the risks, but they also knew that the creature would kill every ship in the convoy if someone did not stop it. The alien vessels were still trying to escape, but the beast was too fast and too strong. "Do it," Jake said. "Wire together every heavy charge we have." Dan turned from his station. "Captain, I can load the bomb into one of our cargo pods. We can launch it like a big missile." "How will we make sure it hits the target?" Jake asked. "We fly right at the creature and release the pod at the last second," Amy said quietly. "Then we try to get away before it explodes." Jake knew what that meant. They would have to fly straight toward the most dangerous creature anyone had ever seen. They would have to get close enough to touch it before releasing their weapon. And they would have to escape before an explosion that could destroy a small moon went off right behind them. "Rick, send a message to all surviving ships," Jake ordered. "Tell them to get as far away as possible. We are about to try something that might kill everything in this area." Rick Hayes worked his controls with shaking hands. "Message sent, sir." The Defiant shook as another tentacle barely missed them. Amy was doing an amazing job of piloting the ship, but the creature was getting closer with each attack. Jake could see burn marks on the hull where the beast's electricity had touched them. "Ben, how much longer do you need?" Jake called out. 2 more minutes, Captain. This is very delicate work." On the main screen, Jake could see the other ships moving away as fast as they could. The Zephyrian flagship was using its quantum drive to jump to a safe distance. The Altarian vessels were firing their plasma engines at full power. Even the ships that had been dismissive of human technology were now depending on the Defiant to save them. Another tentacle slammed into the ship's hull. The lights flickered, and Jake heard metal bending under the impact. The creature was getting more accurate with its attacks. Amy, we need more speed, Jake said. I am giving her everything she has, Captain. The engines are running at 110%. Jake felt the ship vibrate as Amy pushed the old engines beyond their design limits. The Defiant was not built for this kind of high-speed maneuvering, but the ship was holding together. Human engineering might be simple, but it was tough. Bomb is ready, Ben announced over the communication system. Loading it into Cargo Pod 7 now. Dan, prepare to launch on my command, Jake ordered. Pod loaded and ready, sir. Jake took a deep breath. This was it. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Amy, take us in. Full speed toward the creature's center mass. Amy's hands tightened on the controls. Are you sure about this, Captain? I am sure. If we do not stop this thing now, it will destroy every ship in the convoy. The Defiant turned toward the creature and accelerated. Jake could see the beast's main body getting larger on the screen. The wounds from the first attack were almost completely healed. Soon the creature would be back to full strength. Distance to target? Jake asked. 1,000 meters and closing fast, Amy replied. The creature saw them coming and reached out. With its tentacles. It wanted to catch the small ship that had hurt it so badly. Jake could see anger in the way it moved, intelligence in the way it planned its attacks. 500 meters, Amy announced. Steady as she goes, Jake said. 300 meters. The creature's tentacles were all around them now. Amy was flying through a forest of deadly appendages, each one trying to grab the ship. Her piloting skills were incredible, but Jake knew their luck could not last much longer. 100 meters. Amy called out. Jake could see into the creature's mouth now. It was opening wide, ready to swallow the Defiant whole. This was their only chance. Dan, fire the pod. Amy, emergency turn, maximum burn. The cargo pod shot out from the Defiant just as Amy spun the ship in the tightest turn it had ever made. Jake felt his body pressed against his chair as the artificial gravity struggled to keep up. Behind them, the massive bomb flew straight into the creature's mouth. 30 seconds to detonation. 2. Dan shouted. Amy fired the engines at full power, trying to get as far away as possible. But Jake could see they were not going to make it. The explosion would catch them before they reached safety. All hands, brace for impact, Jake announced. Over the ship's communication system, he grabbed onto his chair and prepared for the biggest explosion in human history. Jake Morrison stared at the creature on the main screen. The beast was now 3 times bigger than when it first appeared. Its tentacles held 2 more alien ships, crushing them slowly while feeding on their energy. The remaining ships in the convoy were trying to escape, but the creature was faster than they expected. Ben, what is your plan? Jake asked his chief engineer. Ben Carter moved to the center of the bridge, his eyes bright with excitement. Captain, remember what we used to clear asteroids from shipping lanes? Those mining charges we carry in the cargo bay? Jake nodded. The Defiant carried dozens of simple explosive charges for mining operations. They were basic devices filled with chemical explosives. No advanced technology, no energy cores, just old-fashioned bombs that went off when triggered. Those charges do not use any energy that the creature can feed on, Ben continued. They are just metal containers filled with chemicals that explode. If we can get them inside that thing, we might be able to hurt it. Lisa Park looked confused. But how do we get close enough? That creature will grab us with its tentacles. Not if we play dead, Jake said, understanding Ben's plan. We shut down everything except basic life support. No shields, no weapons, no engines. We drift toward it like a dead ship. Amy Collins turned from her navigation station. Captain, that is very dangerous. If the creature decides to crush us, we will not be able to defend ourselves. Jake knew she was right. It was a huge risk. But the alternative was watching the creature destroy the entire convoy while they ran away. He made his decision. "Rick, open a channel to all remaining ships," Jake ordered. Rick Hayes worked his controls. "Channel open, sir." "This is Captain Morrison of the UES Defiant to all ships. Stop using energy weapons immediately. You are feeding the creature and making it stronger. Repeat, cease all energy weapon fire." The response came quickly from the Zephyrian flagship. "Captain Veltar's," voice was filled with panic. "Captain Morrison, we must fight back. Our quantum cannons are our only hope." "Your quantum cannons are making that thing bigger," Jake replied. "Trust me on this. Power down your weapons and try to escape using minimal energy." Captain Zorn's voice crackled over the radio. "Human ship, you cannot possibly understand how to fight this creature. Your primitive technology is useless here." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. Even now, with their ships being destroyed, the alien captains still thought humans were too stupid to help. "Dan, prepare the mining charges. Ben, get down to the cargo bay and load them into launch tubes." Dan Cooper was the ship's tactical officer. He was young but smart, and he understood weapons better than anyone else on the ship. "How many charges, Captain?" "All of them. I want every mining charge we have loaded and ready to fire." Ben nodded and headed for the door. "It will take about 10 minutes to get everything ready. Amy, plot a course that will take us close to that creature. Make it look like we are drifting, not flying toward it on purpose." Amy's fingers moved over her controls. "Plotting course. Now, sir." Jake watched the main screen as another ship was caught by the creature's tentacles. This time it was a Zephyrian cruiser with over 100 crew members. The ship's quantum shields flared brightly as they tried to break free, but the energy just made the creature stronger. Within seconds, the ship was crushed and absorbed. "Rick, send a message to Fleet Command on Earth. Tell them what we are facing and what we are about to try." Rick looked worried. "Sir, should I also send our last will and testament?" "Not yet," Jake said with a small smile. "We are not dead yet." Lisa walked over to stand next to Jake. "Sir, are you sure about this plan? We only get one chance." "I know. But look at those alien ships. Their advanced technology is useless against this creature. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." On the screen, Jake could see the remaining ships trying to escape. Some had powered down their weapons like he suggested, but others were still firing their energy cannons at the creature. Each blast made the beast grow larger and more aggressive. Ben's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Captain, charges are loaded and ready. I have rigged them with simple timer fuses. No electronic triggers that the creature might detect." "Good work, Ben." "Dan, are the launch tubes ready?" Dan checked his instruments. "All tubes loaded, sir. Waiting for your orders." Jake took a deep breath. The next few minutes would determine if his crew lived or died. "Amy, take us in. Cut all power except life support. I want us to look like a dead ship floating in space." The lights on the bridge dimmed as Amy powered down the ship's systems. The constant hum of the engines stopped, leaving only the quiet sound of the air recycling system. Through the window, Jake could see the creature, turning toward them. "It is working," Amy whispered. "The creature is moving toward us, but slowly. It thinks we are just debris." The Defiant drifted through space like a piece of floating metal. Jake could feel his heart beating fast as the creature got closer. Its tentacles were huge, each one covered in strange lights that pulsed with different colors. The main body of the beast was bigger than a space station, and Jake could see what looked like mouths opening and closing along its surface. "Distance to target?" Jake asked quietly. 500 meters and closing," Amy replied. Jake could see the other ships, in the distance, still trying to escape. Some of them had stopped firing their weapons, but it was too late. The creature had grown too large and too fast. It was picking off the ships one by one. 200 meters, Amy reported. The creature's tentacles were reaching toward the Defiant. Now. Jake could see electricity dancing along their surface. If those tentacles touched his ship while the power was on, the creature would know they were alive. 100 meters, Amy said, her voice barely a whisper. "Dan, prepare to fire." "All charges on my mark," Jake ordered. "Ben, get ready to restart the engines the moment we fire." The creature was right in front of them now. Its main body filled the entire window. Jake could see inside some of the openings on its surface. There were pieces of the ships it had destroyed, still glowing with absorbed energy. 50 meters, Amy announced. One of the creature's tentacles brushed against the Defiant's hull. Jake held his breath, waiting to see if the beast would realize they were alive. The tentacle moved away, apparently satisfied that the ship was dead. "Now!" Jake shouted. "Fire all charges!" Dan's hands flew over his controls. "Firing all mining charges!" 20 small objects shot out from the Defiant toward the creature. They looked like simple metal canisters, nothing impressive or advanced. But Jake knew that sometimes the simplest weapons were the most effective. "Ben, engines now!" Jake called out. The ship's engines roared to life, and Amy spun the Defiant away from the creature as fast as she could. Behind them, the mining charges disappeared into the beast's body. 10 seconds to detonation, Dan announced. Jake watched, the creature on the screen. It had realized that the Defiant was alive and was reaching for them with its tentacles. But they were too far away now. 5 seconds, Dan called out. The creature opened what looked like a mouth and let out a sound that Jake could feel in his bones. Detonation. 3 days had passed since the convoy entered the Kepler Nebula. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the swirling clouds of gas outside the window. The colors were beautiful, but also strange. Red and blue gases mixed together, creating purple streams that moved like slow rivers. Sometimes bright flashes of light appeared deep inside the clouds, but they disappeared before anyone could figure out what caused them. Amy Collins sat at her navigation station, staring at her screen with a worried look on her face. Numbers and lines moved across the display, showing readings from the ship's sensors. She had been watching these readings for hours, and something was wrong. "Captain," Amy called out, "I am picking up some very strange readings." Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of readings?" Amy pointed to her screen. "Gravitational anomalies. The gravity in this area keeps changing, but there is nothing here that should cause that. No planets, no asteroids, nothing big enough to create these gravity fields." Jake studied the numbers on the screen. He did not understand all the technical details, but he could see that the readings were not normal. "Are the other ships seeing this too?" "I tried to contact them, but they said their sensors are not picking up anything unusual. Captain Zorn told me that our old sensors are probably just malfunctioning." Jake felt frustrated. The alien captains had been dismissing every concern his crew raised. They acted like humans were too stupid to understand what their own instruments were telling them. But Jake trusted his crew. Amy had never been wrong about navigation readings before. Rick Hayes looked up from his communications station. "Captain, the Zephyrian flagship is requesting that we increase speed. They say we are falling behind the main group." Jake looked out the window. The alien ships were moving faster through the nebula, their advanced engines pushing them through. The thick gas clouds. The Defiant was staying at a safe speed, but that meant they were now at the back of the convoy. "Tell them we are maintaining safe speed for these conditions," Jake said. Lisa Park walked over to where Jake was standing. She had been studying the mission reports for the past hour. "Sir, I have been reading about this nebula. According to the files, it was declared safe by long-range scouts 6 months ago, but those scouts only flew around the outside edges. No one has actually traveled all the way through it before." "So we are the first?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. We are flying blind through space that no one has ever explored." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The alien captains were so confident in their technology that they had not bothered to check if the nebula was really safe. They were treating this like a routine flight through empty space, but they were actually exploring unknown territory. Ben. Carter came onto the bridge carrying a toolkit in one hand. His face was serious, which was unusual for the normally cheerful engineer. "Captain, I need to report something. My sensors in the engine room are picking up electromagnetic disturbances." "What kind of disturbances?" Jake asked. "The kind that usually happen before something bad attacks ships. I have seen readings like this before, during the war with the Korath pirates, right before they would use their energy weapons on us." Jake felt cold. Ben had more experience with space combat than anyone else on the ship. If he was worried, then there was definitely something to worry about. "Are you sure?" "Pretty sure. The electromagnetic field around us keeps getting stronger. Something out there is building up a lot of energy." Amy suddenly gasped and pointed at her screen. "Captain, look at this. The gravitational readings just jumped. Something big is moving toward us." Jake ran to the communications station. "Rick, get me a channel to all ships. Emergency frequency." Rick's fingers moved quickly over his controls. "Channel open, sir." "All ships. This is Captain Morrison of the Defiant. We are detecting hostile readings. I recommend all vessels go to battle stations immediately." The response came quickly from the Zephyrian flagship. Captain Veltar's voice sounded annoyed. "Captain Morrison, our sensors show no threats. Your old equipment is clearly malfunctioning. Do not create panic over false readings." "Captain Zorn of the Altarian ship, heavy strike here," came another voice. "Our plasma sensors are clean. No energy signatures detected. Recommend human ship check its systems." Jake wanted to scream at them, but before he could respond, Amy shouted from her station. "Contact! Something huge just appeared on sensors. Distance 2,000 kilometers and closing fast." On the main screen, Jake could see the alien ships continuing to fly in their neat formation. They had not changed course or speed. Their advanced sensors were not picking up whatever was coming toward them. Then it happened. The thing that came out of the nebula was like nothing Jake had ever seen before. It was huge, bigger than 3 ships put together. Parts of it looked like metal, but other parts looked alive. Long tentacles stretched out from its main body, each one thick as a building and hundreds of meters long. Its surface was covered in strange lights that pulsed with different colors. "What is that thing?" Lisa whispered. Before anyone could answer, the creature attacked. One of its tentacles shot out like a whip and wrapped around a Zephyrian escort ship. The ship's quantum shields flared to life, creating a bright blue glow around the hull. But instead of protecting the ship, the shields seemed to make the creature stronger. The lights on its body grew brighter, and more tentacles reached out toward other ships. "It is feeding on their energy shields," Ben shouted. "The more power they use, the stronger it gets." The Zephyrian escort ship was being crushed. Jake could see the hull bending under the pressure of the creature's grip. Then there was a bright flash, and the ship was gone. The creature had absorbed it completely. Panic filled the communication channels. Alien voices shouted orders and warnings in their own languages. The neat formation of ships broke apart as each vessel tried to escape. Plasma cannons fired at the creature, but the energy blasts just made it grow larger and more aggressive. Another ship disappeared, this time an Altarian destroyer. Its powerful plasma core exploded when the creature's tentacles tore through the hull, but even that explosion seemed to feed the beast. "Captain," Amy called out, her voice shaking, "that thing is turning toward us." Jake looked at the main screen. The creature had noticed the Defiant. Two of its tentacles were moving in their direction, and Jake could see strange electricity dancing along their surface. "All stop," Jake ordered. "Cut all power except life support." "Sir?" Lisa asked. "This thing feeds on energy. The alien ships are using their advanced weapons and shields, and that is making it stronger. We need to try something different." Rick looked up from his station. "Captain, the other ships are asking for help. They want us to fire our weapons at the creature." Jake watched as another alien ship was grabbed by the tentacles. The creature's body was now twice as big as when it first appeared. Every energy blast that hit it made it grow. "No," Jake said firmly. "We are not going to feed this thing. We need to find another way to fight it." The bridge was quiet, except for the sound of the ship's engines powering down. Outside the window, the creature continued its attack on the alien ships. Jake knew his crew was waiting for orders, but he had no idea how to fight something that got stronger every time you shot at it. Then Ben Carter smiled. "Captain, I think I know how to kill this thing, but it is going to require us to get very close." Captain Jake Morrison walked across the metal floor of his ship's bridge. His boots made soft clicking sounds with each step. He stopped at the big window and looked out at the other ships floating in space around them. The alien vessels looked so different from his own ship. They were smooth and shiny, with lights that glowed in colors he had never seen before. Their hulls seemed to bend light around them, making them look like they were made of liquid metal. His ship, the UES Defiant, looked old next to them. The gray metal hull had scratches and dents from years of flying through space. Paint was missing in some places. The engines were big and bulky, not like the sleek alien ones that barely made any noise. Jake knew what the alien captains thought when they looked at his ship. They thought it was junk. "Captain Morrison," called Lisa Park from behind him. She was his first officer and had been with him for 3 years. She held a tablet in her hands and walked over to where he stood. "I just finished reading the mission files. We are supposed to protect a group of diplomatic ships while they travel through the Kepler Nebula." Jake turned to look at her. Lisa was young but smart. She had graduated at the top of her class from the Space Academy. Sometimes Jake wondered why she had chosen to serve on an old ship like the Defiant when she could have gotten a position on one of the newer human vessels. "What do the other captains think about having us along?" Jake asked. Lisa looked down at her tablet. "They are not happy about it. The Zephyrian captain asked why humans were even included in this mission. He said our technology is too old to be useful." Jake felt his jaw tighten. The Zephyrians were tall, thin aliens with blue skin and big eyes. They thought they were better than everyone else because their ships could travel faster than light, without making the space around them shake. Their quantum shields could stop almost any weapon. Jake had to admit their technology was impressive, but that did not give them the right to look down on humans. "And the Altarians?" Jake asked. "They did not say much, but Captain Zorn made it clear that they think we will slow them down. He suggested that we stay at the back of the group so we do not get in the way. The Altarians were different from the Zephyrians. They were shorter and had thick, rough skin that looked like rock. Their ships used plasma cores that could power, weapons strong enough to blow up a small moon. They did not talk much, but when they did, it was usually to complain about something. Jake looked back out the window. He could see the crew members of the other ships moving around inside their vessels. Everything looked so clean and perfect. Their computers probably did most of the work for them. Jake bet half of those crew members had never had to fix anything with their own hands. The door to the bridge opened with a hiss. Ben Carter walked in, wiping his hands on a dirty cloth. His blue work uniform was covered in grease and oil stains. Ben was the chief engineer and had been working on ships since. Before Jake became a captain, he knew every pipe, wire, and bolt on the Defiant. "How are the engines looking, Ben?" Jake asked. Ben smiled. "They are running better than they have in months. My team just finished checking every system on the ship. We replaced some old parts and cleaned out the fuel lines. She might not be as fancy as those alien ships, but she will get us where we need to go." "What about the weapons?" "All working fine. The railguns are loaded and ready. The missile tubes are clean and the targeting system is working perfectly. We might not have energy shields or plasma cannons, but our weapons will put holes in anything they hit." Jake nodded. The Defiant carried simple but effective weapons. The railguns shot metal slugs at very high speed. The missiles had explosive warheads that did not need any special technology to work. Other species laughed at human weapons because they seemed so basic, but Jake had seen what they could do. Amy Collins looked up from her station. She was the navigation officer and spent most of her time studying star charts and plotting courses through space. "Captain, I have been looking at the route through the Kepler Nebula. Something does not feel right about it." "What do you mean?" Jake asked. Amy pointed to her screen. "The nebula is full of gas and dust that makes it hard to see. Long-range sensors cannot get clear readings inside it. The other ships are planning to fly straight through using their advanced navigation systems, but what if those systems stop working?" Jake walked over to look at her screen. The Kepler Nebula was huge, stretching across millions of miles of space. It was beautiful, with swirling colors of red, blue, and green gas, but Jake knew that beauty could hide danger. "Have you told the other captains about your concerns?" Jake asked. "I tried, but they said their sensors are much better than ours. Captain Zorn told me that humans worry too much because we do not understand advanced technology." Jake felt anger building in his chest. He had been flying through dangerous space for 15 years. He had survived asteroid storms, solar flares, and attacks by space pirates. His instincts had kept him and his crew alive more times than he could count. But the alien captains dismissed his experience because his ship was old. Rick Hayes, the communications officer, spoke up from his station. "Captain, we are getting a message from the flagship. They want all ships to form up and prepare to enter the nebula." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was small compared to the alien ships. The Defiant only had 42 people on board, while some of the alien vessels had crews of over 200. But Jake trusted every person on his ship. They knew how to work with their hands and fix problems without relying on computers to do everything for them. Lisa stepped closer to Jake. "Sir, what are your orders?" Jake took a deep breath. "Tell them we are ready to go, but I want everyone to stay alert. Keep all sensors running and watch for anything unusual. I have a feeling this mission is not going to be as simple as they think." The alien ships began to move toward the nebula. Their engines made almost no sound as they glided through space. The Defiant's engines rumbled to life with a deep, powerful sound that Jake could feel in his bones. The ship might be old and simple, but it was reliable. When everything else failed, the Defiant would still be flying. As they approached the swirling gas clouds of the Kepler Nebula, Jake could not shake the feeling that they were flying into trouble. The other captains were confident in their advanced technology, but Jake had learned that the universe had ways of surprising even the most prepared travelers. He just hoped his old ship and experienced crew would be enough to handle whatever was waiting for them in the dark.